What's up YouTube, Car Boss here, back in another video where we talk about cards, money, investing, and today it's Q&A where I got a question from a viewer and it's pretty simple. Number one, what are my thoughts on fractional ownership in terms of trading cards? And number two, why haven't we heard much about them of late? Well, the questions might be simple, but there's a lot of things to dive into. Stick around. Okay, welcome back. So let's talk a bit about fractional ownership or fractional card investing in terms of trading cards and collectibles. If you guys understand equities and stocks, which I assume most of you guys do, right? So they are basically taking a percentage of the ownership of the company, or in this case, a percentage ownership of a particular collectible or a trading card. So for example, if a company say had 100,000 shares in issue and you own 2,000 shares, which meant that you were a 2% owner of that company. And when you translate that to cards, it's essentially the same thing. So if there's a card that's worth say $100,000 and you own 2% in that card, so which means that your holding or your ownership value in that card is $2,000, right? So, but of course, that's all just numbers and digits. You don't actually own a physical 2% of, let's say, this Michael Jordan card right here. Okay, so it's just fractional ownership. You know, it's a portfolio holding that you can see on your phone at any point in time, and most of the times it's just representing a digital image on your phone, which you can show your friends and family and look at it yourself. But it's a lot different from holding the physical card in your hand. Now you probably ask, why would someone want to own 2% of digital card as opposed to owning outright of a physical card such as this? Well, there are two obvious answers. Number one, the full price of that particular card in question, right, could be far out of reach of your financial standing. And two, there is a huge amount of risk, investment risk, of putting all your cash into one particular card. So kind of like fractional ownership kind of like quote unquote solve that problem by offering its investors fractional portions of a high-end card, or something that is most of the time it's actually difficult for you to obtain, and hence allowing easier entry, and in a way de-risking yourself in terms of large capital outlay for a single card. Sounds like a great sales pitch, right? Well, before we talk about what are my thoughts on fractional ownership, let's look at a couple of big ones that are on the market. There is Dips, collectible.com, and then there's Rally as well. All these platforms are kind of similar from what I can tell, but I'd like to caveat that I personally have not used any of these platforms before, but based on information that I can get on the websites, they are all preaching the same thing, right? Real-time liquidity, and of course SEC approved, therefore they are safe and secure. So before you consider the merits of fractional investing, you have to dial back on what is the goal of card collecting investing. And essentially the point is that two very words, right? Collecting and investing. The joy you get from collecting as well as making money while you're investing. But before the time of NFTs and digital cards, true collecting comes in a form of feeling the physical cards in your hand, putting it all in a collection for you to see, and that's still all true up to today. In fact, that you get to display it, you get to hold it, you got to show it to your friends, right? So and bring it to conventions and all those, right? It just brings a kind of like an unexplainable value on its own, and I find it hard to replace all of that with just digits on a piece of paper, right? So then comes the investing part, where the goal is obviously to make money. So I personally am an investor of cards, so my objectives are very clear. I do want to make money, buying and selling cards. But what's also clear to me is the path to making profit, where you like to have as much information and as much element of control as you can. So when you look at fractional ownership, right, it's obvious that you're not collecting, right, because you don't get actually any of these physical cards, and strictly it's investing. So where you play the digits, that's how you play, like in the free equities or stock market, right? But here's my sticking point on fractional ownership. Let's just take a simple example of 1986 Michael Jordan here, right, flip 57, and I'm going to use a BGS 8.5 as an example that's worth about $8,000, on the platform, as you can see in the screenshot here. There's just say for illustration purposes, there's 10,000 shares in issue. That means its value at 80 cents per share, and that gives you a total of $8,000 value roughly, right? And just say for illustration, you own 1,000 shares, right, which equates to 10% ownership of that particular card. So technically your portfolio is worth $800, right? And I say technically because there are a few variables that you actually need to consider before arriving at the true value of your ownership in that card, right? So number one, the value of the underlying asset itself, right, the Jordan card that I'm speaking of in this case, right, is actually valued based on different metrics as compared to how perhaps you and I would value a certain card, And while different websites have their own different ways of measurement, some would use, for example, card ladder and things like that, or some maybe have their own internal assessments, but it definitely is different from how you and I were to do it, right? So people kind of like you and I will look at comps, we look at what's existing listings at the moment, consider the pop count, and also a lot of objective plus subjective metrics together. But how these guys do it, we do not know. But as you can see here, based on the examples I have, looking at the last couple of eBay sales of the same card, relatively close dates, you can actually see the disparity in terms of the prices. So what it means is sometimes, whenever prices move up and down in the free open market such as eBay, it's not necessarily reflected in the platform by itself. So as you can tell, the price here is still sitting at about $8,000, a couple of days after those remaining, those eBay sales had already closed. Okay, so that begs you to give you a question, right? So when you look at the disparity in terms of prices, in terms of so-called market value for that particular card, right? Michael Jordan BGS 8.5 57, is your portfolio, in this case 10% holding, worth $800 or $700, given the average prices of, let's say, for that 8.5 based on eBay comps, would someone pay you $800 for your shares, right? Which technically in the free market, you could acquire, say, 10% of the Jordan for $700, which also leads to my next point, which is about spread. Now, spread means the differences between the offer or the sell price and the bid, which is the buy price, right? In this situation, the offer price could be 80 cents per share in our example, and the bid price could be 70 cents per share, given that what people look at and perceive what the true market value of that card is versus what the fractional value of the card based on the platform, divided by X number of shares. These are kind of like loose interpretations, but in this example, you can tell that there is a significant difference between how fractional ownership market operates versus a conventional market. Okay, so, and third thing would be liquidity. Now, of course, all these fractional share ownership companies offer instant liquidity, right? Meaning you can cash out your wallet at any point in time, and the way you fund your wallet, as in putting money into your wallet, is through selling your holdings or your stock. Okay, so by and large, drawing down your wallet is like drawing down your PayPal to your bank account, but you first have to move your holdings or your stock. Okay, whereby that's where the bid and offer price comes in. So in the market where it's actually booming, where the market is great, that's not an issue, right? People are always transacting. Chances are you're going to get very close to your bid price. But when the market is actually not doing so well, there is a hard press on trying to get money out from the market. Okay, so you actually have to, in normal circumstances, you could take a card, put it on different platforms, and sell it on eBay or whatever kind of thing, and then have the money put to your PayPal and then withdraw it instantly. But in this case, you got to really depend on the market itself within that platform, okay, to kind of like take up your holdings. Of course, depends on what price you put it at the end of the day, but it's just very limited. That's the word that I probably want to use. The options are very limited in order for you to kind of cash out, even though the platforms itself offer liquidity, right? So I kind of like you say you lose a bit of flexibility in that sense as compared to conventional card. And lastly, fees. Okay, we all dislike fees, and find different ways as much as possible to try to reduce or minimize the fees. And I talk about eBay fees so often on this channel as the necessary cost in doing business. Okay, so and what are the benefits that we can actually derive from that cost? I'm not going to touch on the benefits of eBay for that matter. It's no different from this kind of fractional ownership service. Okay, obviously there's fees has to be in place for them to continue to provide these kind of service. But of course, looking at, for example, this table here, right? So these are multiple kind of different costs that's inbuilt in this platform for using the service. That's trading costs, that's transactional fees, right? Like buying and selling. And the drop fees is basically representing the first card of value which the platform gets, for curating a card that you want to put onto the platform. So fees, there's also fees for putting money into the system, fees for taking out money from the system. Okay, so again, I'm not saying fees is a bad thing, right? Fees are a necessity for doing business, but if you're considering fractional ownership now versus the normal conventional approach, it's good to understand how all these fees work and how does that affect your investing decision or where you put your money in. So the second part of that question is where are all these fractional ownership companies these days, and why haven't we heard much about them of late? Okay, so in early years, these platforms were offering a solution where it allowed people to buy into collectibles which were escalating in prices. The idea to be part owner of something that's likely unattainable in terms of price, right, in your lifetime, it's kind of intriguing. So, but as time went by, the prices started to come down on most of these high-end collectibles and start to normalize. So the novelty of that thought kind of like slowly dissipated in my opinion, right? So these companies are still around, they're still in existence, there are still money in the system, okay, but you can kind of gauge the popularity of these platforms through the recent drops or the IPOs in a sense, right? So I guess I would say that the quality has gone down quite a fair bit compared to early years. Okay, so if you have a look at some of the offerings that's on the system, it's not as good as it was previously. I guess Rally is still okay based on what I surveyed, but I don't see much activity on collectibles.com and Dips as well. So again, this is my high level look into these platforms. So I personally am not a fan of these spaces, but I won't comment, especially to the people who are already pre-existingly using the service and invest heavily in those services. So basically, that's my take on fractional ownership on collectibles trading cards. Specifically, in a nutshell, it's not something for me, nor something I would personally advocate to my friends. But I have to say that the idea was indeed sound at that point in time when card prices were literally going bonkers. Okay, so thank you so much for your question. I enjoyed researching the topic and sharing my view with you guys. And so if you guys have something else on your mind, card investing related, feel free to drop me a DM on my Instagram. Do like and subscribe for more content in the future. Till the next one, Cowboys out.